Hello, everyone. Okay, I think it started. Okay. Hello, everyone. This is the first live session of the podcast Progress Over Perfection. And I'm very excited to share this live with Melissa Ann. Melissa Ann, we met few weeks ago, and I was surprised about the work that you do with the grief. So just I'm going to read a little bit of your bio so we can give some introduction with the people that are listening and watching this video. Okay, Melissa Ann is a military veteran, Gold Star spouse, widow, homeschooling mom, and multi-passionate entrepreneur with a passion for helping others as a cliche as a statement may be. Sorry if my English sometimes gets in the way. Her hope is to leave a strong impact on the lives of others and help them create a life full of purpose, health, and well-being. So, for what I understand, you're doing the master in clinical mental health, and your dream is one day to work with horses and pets, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. You're welcome, Melissa.
Thank you so much. And your English was fine. I understood all of it.
Okay, so let's start with the first question. What inspired you to start an accountability coaching? Because we talk about accountability here. What is accountability and what is accountability coaching?
So, accountability coaching is something that I kind of came into while I was going through my grief journey, which I know we've talked about before. But essentially, like, I knew all the things I needed to do. I just needed somebody to kind of call me out in like a healthy way, but be like, hey, like, these are the goals that you had. Like, even just getting out of bed and going for a walk or going and working out or like just different things like that. I knew everything I needed to do because like I had my personal training, I had worked out, like I knew all the things to do. It was just I was in such a funk just going through the grief at this point in time. I had been like a widow for about a year, but before that, I was always at the gym. I was always eating really well. I was doing all the things. And so I realized it was really important to be able to just have somebody who because friends and family, like they mean well, but they also have their own lives. And so they may forget to check in or, that you guys made an agreement that you would check in on each other to go towards your goals just because we all have our lives. And so the benefit of coaching is like, this is somebody that you're hiring. So like they are going to check in on you. And so it was something that I feel like was a nice little trajectory to just get myself back kind of in action, so to speak, with taking better care of myself.
So you working helping people that are in a grief state to restart, correct?
Mm-hmm.
To restart and you have them to be accountable on the action they were supposed to take, correct?
Yeah.
So what make you choose this field?
I've always had a passion for like health and wellness in general. I was originally going to do like sports medicine back in high school, so like working with athletes. And then I joined the military and was a medic in the Army. And so I worked a lot with the wellness of individuals, more from a medical aspect, but I was working towards like an exercise science degree at the time. And so I've always had like a passion for understanding how our body, with movement and with what we give ourselves, like how it all combines for our wellness and our mental health. And so I think that's kind of where it all just started. And then I got my personal training certifications and health coaching certification and have continued to dive into like nutrition education and different areas like that. And I think it's just something that I've always been interested in. But I will say back in my Army days when I was just like a young teenager and like early 20s, I didn't really understand the mental impact that can come into play for people taking care of themselves. Before I was like, well, just go to the gym. What do you mean? Like, just wake up and go to the gym. And I just didn't, it never really registered for me. And so I guess in hindsight, as much as like I wouldn't wish bad things to happen, I am like, I can see like the benefits of me having gone through the grief of losing my husband and like the father of my child and all of that, just because it helped me realize like, oh yeah, there is this heaviness that may not be visible that makes it hard to get out of bed and makes it hard to, even though you know you want to do these things, there's just this like mix, something that's kind of blocking them. And so being able to sit with people and, not like allow them the grace that like it's okay, like this is part of the process, but also helping them build that trajectory and like working towards things, even if it's small little steps. And that accountability is slash coaching is like the, hey, I'm here for you, but also like, hey, this is what you said you wanted to do. Like, where are we at in that? Like, what would help you reach this better? Like, what kind of things you need to put into place to make it easier for you? And so I think that's kind of just where it's been at.
What do you think we should know about grief?
It's never ending. It just looks different every time, is what I would say. It doesn't necessarily look the same for everyone. I know, like, even with you working in counseling, I'm sure you see grief show up in different ways, but I think there's a beauty in the process of how it shows up. I tell people all the time that, like, it's a slow unravel because if we were to be handed all of the grief at once, we would not exist. It would be so hard. And so we're handed little bits of grief along the way, like maybe this little memory or this hardship or being stuck in the what ifs. Like we have different cycles that we may ebb and flow through in the process of going through grief. And that it's really important for us to have support. And sometimes, unfortunately, we don't have the support that we need. And
What do you think are the misconception about grief and what people misunderstand about grief?
that people will just get over it, or that, oh, well, they're happy now, so everything must be fine now. I think those are some of the really big ones because you'll see, especially with social media, where you tend to only see the highlight reels of people's lives. And you can see, oh, they've moved on, they're happy, they have this house, they have their, they have all these things, like they must be good to go, like we don't need to worry about it anymore. But still, like I mentioned, like the group doesn't ever necessarily go away, it just shows up differently. And so I think that's one of the misconceptions with grief, is that some people think that it just goes away, or like, why aren't you over it yet, kind of sort of thing. And, there are some things that people just won't ever be able to get over. Like they may be able to still live their lives and be happy, but that they can be together. Like you can be happy and grieving at the same time.
That's true. That's true. The expectation that everybody grieve in the same way and everybody should do the same thing, and the expectation that should be quick. Yeah. When many times we need just to take our time and our space to do this. What the benefit client gain from your program?
I'd say the biggest thing is having that support that's going to be there. Like I mentioned earlier, with our friends and family might mean well. And like I've even done it in the past before where like a friend and I were like, okay, we're going to check in with each other every Thursday to see how we are working towards that goal. And we might do it for like a week or two, but then one of us falls off the wagon and like doesn't get it done, or one of us just disappears because of life circumstances. Whereas having that coach in your corner, like they're going to be there and they're going to be almost like this little pocket. So you can like check in and be like, hey, like I'm feeling this and this today, or like I didn't really do it because of XYZ. And being able to have somebody who has experience with like different forms of motivation and behavioral change and being able to work with you through that, whereas a friend or a family member may not have those skill sets. They're just like, I don't know, like it's fine, like just do it next week. But like then nothing's really fixed. And so the benefit of having that coach is you have somebody who has that experience of, okay, well, what, like going a little bit deeper of like, well, what did keep you, or like what's the deeper rooted issue for not reaching these goals, or looking at different mindset shifts that can happen first before that behavioral change happens. So they have just an extra layer of support for you, as well as a better understanding of like how our minds work and like what helps motivate us and things like that versus just a friend or a family trying to help out.
Yeah, you become like the companion, no?
Mm-hmm.
That companion that everybody should have in this moment. The outsider. The outsider doesn't tell you just move on,
Mm-hmm.
grow up.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. You know that. You're there to listen, and of course, with the psychology training, with your experience in all the study you have done, you actually can help them to recover if it's possible properly.
Yeah. And there are times too, well, I will add in there that there are times where I might say, hey, I think you would benefit from diving deeper into this with a counselor or with, a therapy session. So the accountability side is more of like, okay, I feel like I'm in an okay space, and then being able to just help them like move towards their goals better. But there are going to be times where like maybe they are really deep into the grief and they do need to speak with somebody on like that deeper therapeutic level that a coach, can help to some degree. But there's certain things within therapy or maybe medication might be a better option for somebody to help them before they come to me. So that's something else that I discuss with people is like, where are we at? And could you benefit from going through therapy or counseling or even like psychiatric for medication and stuff like that?
Are you able to do counseling with them as well?
No, not right now. That's where I'm working on my master's towards. So like here in the US, like coaches and counselors, they have like areas that like in between like the Venn diagram. So there's things that we have that are similar, but then there's things like I can't diagnose as a coach, and there's certain like techniques that I'm not able to do from a mental health aspect, but I can sit with them and like focus on here and now and goal setting and mindset shifting and things like that. But like deep diving into like your family trauma and things like that, that's probably not something that I would be able to do. That's more on the counseling side of things.
It's very different from, I think, from US, from here. Counseling is not regulated as a
Mhm.
profession. So I don't know if in US is regulated.
Coaching's not regulated, but counseling,
Is
so counseling is, and then there's different forms of counseling. So like there's the family, and they all have like their different acronyms, and then even like social work versus a counselor. So there's all
there's all
kinds of
these things
roles.
there.
And then they all kind of interlap but have like a slightly different thing that they can do. So it's a lot more chaotic over here. And then coaching is kind of the unregulated area. You even see people who are coaches and they do deep dive into, I think because it's unregulated, some people might dive deeper into, mental health and things that they technically
Mm.
maybe shouldn't. But then there's like all these like certifications people get, and it's kind of taking it with a grain of salt because
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
pay anybody thousands of dollars for a fancy certification. It doesn't necessarily mean it's a good one. But so, yeah, that's the side. Social work and counseling and things like that are more regulated. And then
Uh,
coaching here in the US isn't.
what are the benefits the clients gain with your coaching, with your accountability coach?
Say one, being able to give themselves more grace. I think sometimes, especially if we are new to the grieving process. And like I mentioned, even with my experience of like, I was go, 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 and then hit by grief. And now all of a sudden, I'm like, I don't even like, I don't know how to get out of bed anymore, kind of sort of thing. And so being able to feel seen is one of the big ones is like we were talking about, friends and family may mean well, but they may not know exactly what to say or what to do or why don't you get over it kind of sort of thing. And so being able to work with me, somebody who has had experience and training and like learning, just regularly learning, having that support, but also again from the accountability side of like, okay, like I know that this is where you're at, but these are the goals that you told me you wanted to work with over these 12 weeks or however many weeks. So what can we do to help you get there? Is it we go out for checking the mail? Like, let's check the mail once a week. Like, because sometimes it's even just going out to check the mail can be a huge thing. And so maybe it's working towards that, or maybe it's I want to not order DoorDash every single day because that can be a mental health thing too, where it's like, I just can't make food. I'm going to I don't know if there's a DoorDash in Australia or not.
Yes.
It's like, I was like, is that worldwide? I was like, I think it,
Worldwide.
okay. Okay. Sometimes I was like, oh wait, I don't know. But yeah, things like that, where it's like just making meals can be hard and energy. And so like, how can we, work on whichever goal that is to accomplish that? So I think that's the biggest thing is no goal is too big or too small. I mean, maybe a goal might need to be separated into smaller chunks, but being able to sit there and, help them be realistic towards those goals and being okay with like, hey, like even if our big goal is that you go check the mail and you eat out less, and make a better meal or like a homemade meal or, things like that.
Yeah.
Being able to see that like health change and like how it affects the rest of their body too.
I like it. What stage is the best for people? What is the stage of the grief that you do the best job? At the beginning of the grief?
I really
Later
think it
on?
comes down to the person. If they're not able to really talk about it at all or explain anything, then like I mentioned, maybe it's more important for them to focus on therapy and sitting with somebody and talking through that. But it really just depends on the person and where they're at. So we might have like a call and chat before I welcome them in for a 12-week program, just to kind of gauge where I feel like they might be at or where they feel like they're at. And maybe we don't know until we're through the 12 weeks and we're like, all right, like this is what we got through. And like here would be some of like the recommendations for moving forward. Or maybe even during the 12 weeks, it's like, hey, like therapy or like looking into, depending on where they're at, like if medication could be an option and having them talk with their providers about what that might look like. But I don't think, like we mentioned earlier with grief has like comes and goes in waves and it hits us differently at different times. And so you could be at the start of grief and do well with accountability coaching, or you could be in the middle of grief or years later and something hits you and you're almost like you were just right back at it for the first time again. And so I don't think that there's really a timeline of grief. It's just where you're at with being able to get the help that you want. And so I think just being open to like, I could benefit from accountability coaching. I think that alone is like, okay, like you can, like, if you're comfortable with accepting that help, I think that's a huge area, because before that, people don't want to have any help at all. And so I can't help you if you don't want help.
No.
And so
No,
I
no, no.
think that's the biggest thing rather than where in grief that they're at.
So when they're ready. What is grief?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm like, I can describe how it shows up as symptoms of grief, but
You can tell
grief
me what is grief for you,
yeah,
and
I
what
think
is
it can be an emptiness. Like, so I know I've talked, like I have the From Grief to Gold podcast where I have different people in all forms of grief. And so I tell people grief isn't always the loss of a loved one. It can be the loss of a life that you thought you were going to have, whether that's your career change or maybe a disability came up that like prevented you from the life that you wanted to be able to have. It can be child loss or spouse loss or some type of family, a loved one that like is physically gone from this world. But I guess the best summary of grief is some type of loss, like that brings like an emptiness inside, would be like the simplest version of that. And how that shows up might be different for everyone. It might be sleeping in bed all day and depression or anxiety. It could be super successful overachieving to avoid feeling the sadness. It could be substance use. So it's like the symptoms can all show up completely different, but I think the root of grief is the loss or emptiness because of not having something.
what is the effect of this emptiness on personal life?
Again, I think the effect can be different for a number of people. For some people, it could lead to, mental health situations like the depression and not feeling like you can get up anymore, and like a loss of hope could be one. And so just like not feeling like there's anything left to live for. It could be the overachiever who is like, I don't want to feel this. This emptiness is uncomfortable. I'm just going to be as busy as possible and never notice that feeling is there until burnout or, something catalyst moment happens that stops them from being an overachiever. Or it could be, like I said, like the substance use that tends to happen, and something that helps get rid of and hide. So I think it depends on the person, how that shows up and how it affects their lives. Some people are able to sit with it and some people aren't. And it's how that affects you moving forward.
Yeah, grief can actually, if not taken care of, um, can actually make you take action on yourself that are not really the best things to do. And is yeah, this is why you're right. Even the loss of the end of a relationship
Mm.
is why, or an affair. When you discover that your spouse have an affair, you have go through these griefs, this, because you lose the dream, the dream about your relationship is going to die, and you have this flashback, and you have this thought about depression and anxiety, all over. And then, as you say, there's people that start to overworking and become very overbusy. That is not healthy. Or they start to do zero and sleep all day, don't want to do anything, are not passionate. That is a type of grief as well. Yeah, you spot on in that. Is something that too many times in our society we don't respect the grief. Yeah,
I
what do you
think
think?
some of it too is, unless you've experienced it, you don't really know what to do. And our society, like I remember reading, because I don't really have much of a spiritual practice, but I remember I came across something for Judaism, and they have like a literal name and a process, and like X days, I think it's like 7 days of like we sit and we grieve and we give you food or we do these things. And I was like blown away, because I was like, I have never seen that ever for most society. And so I think that's a huge problem with working through grief, is just a lot of us just aren't told what to do, or there's no like practice or rule book for what we're supposed to do. And so it can make people uncomfortable, especially if they've never been through it or they don't feel like they've been through it.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. As you say, me as well, I'm not a big religious fan. And sometime I not understand this figure that sell a quick grief fix.
Yeah.
We need to take our time, guys. We need to take our time and take care of us. Of course, you must move on in life, but in your way, in your steps.
Mhm. Yeah.
Not everybody a Rocky or Rambo. Okay, so those are movies. Yeah,
Yes.
the quick recovery is many times is in the movie. No, you ever watch these movies that they have this big car crash and 7 people in a car died, and a moment later they on to smashing everybody. Come on, guys.
Mhm.
Grief is something different.
And I think too, something that has been talked about more, especially because I come from the military background, and like
Yeah.
mental health is like, oh, that doesn't exist, you're fine, kind of sort of thing. But something that I think has been really good symbolism is the reminder that, we break a bone, people expect, depending on the severity of the brokenness, that it's going to take a long time to heal. Potentially, it could take weeks, it could take months. You're going to probably need a rehab to get those muscles moving again how they're supposed to. It may not ever be the same, like it may look the same, but it may, depending on how it healed, it may not be able to function the same way that it used to. And so we acknowledge that, we understand that, but for our brain, we don't really acknowledge that as well. And so I think the more people realize that like things like grief and other mental health circumstances are like a broken bone that needs its own different time, and sometimes it may never fully heal or may never fully be exactly the same, but same as the broken bone or the things like that, like you figure out a new normal. And so it doesn't mean that the broken bone never existed, never happened. You just figure out a new way to go about your life again.
Yeah. Can you tell me one of the success stories? Can you share a success stories?
I think the biggest thing was like realizing that things don't have to look the same as everyone else. And so, especially with social media, we see like fitness and all the things. And it's like, oh, you have to go to the gym. You have to lift weights. You need to go to the gym this many days a week and eat all of these homemade meals and all these things. Like we're given just an endless to-do list on top of our already busy schedules. And helping clients realize that it doesn't have to be like that. Also realizing a lot of those people get paid to do all of that. And something as simple as like going for a walk for a few minutes every day or a few minutes every week, or still eating out, but I'm going to make sure that I actually get vegetables on the side, or I'm going to, just that these small steps really do make an impact and that it can look differently. So like one of the things that I really like to help people with is realizing that you don't even have to go to like a physical gym, just like find something you enjoy that keeps you active. So like I always share like from my history, like the thing that helped me get out of my big rut was I joined a martial arts gym. And I fell in love with it because it brought me community. It had kind of that added accountability. It had that support, and I was able to be physically fit. And then like in a way that was fun. And so I like to sit with the different clients and be like, well, what would sound fun? It could be ice skating. It could be rollerblading. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to go to the gym. I have to do this to get myself moving. It's like, what can we find excitement in? Or same with food. Like people think, at least here in America, like fitness is like plain rice and chicken and like a vegetable and that's healthy. And it's like, no, like you can love your food and it be good for you. And so just being able to give them these aha moments of, something so simple, but something that, just because of society, they never really would have thought of.
Can you share with us one of your clients' success? Tell me a story of one of your clients that came in with a grief and walk out with a goal.
Yeah. I think one of the ones is, they were going through a divorce and, they have to situate their working, they have their house, they have all these things that they have to figure out. And then they were also dealing with like rheumatoid arthritis type of circumstance. So they're already kind of limited with what they can do. And even though we only worked for a couple of weeks together, my favorite thing was that I'm still in their head. And so she was able to like find new workout ideas. And so she loved going through the pool. And so she'd go and do all these pool exercises. And she ended up joining another gym even after we stopped working together. And I think that's the thing that makes me really happy to see is that even though I'm not getting paid anymore, because it's not about me getting paid. Like, of course, yes, I have bills to do and things to take care of, but it's the fact that like even after we're done working together, I still come to mind. And so she would randomly text me and be like, oh, I thought of you, and like I remember like when I had to do this and this and this with you, and like now I keep that in mind whenever I'm going through certain things. And she's been able to reach her like physical fitness goals, but also she kept her house, she kept her family, she kept all these different things that she was really, really stressed out about. And just being able to like take care of herself better, but then balance and like realizing that it didn't have to be like these like this boring life to be able to reach her goals. I think that one was really nice to see, just because, like I said, it wasn't a long time. Certain people like require 12 weeks or they require these different things, but we were only together for like a month. And just to know that even years later, she's like, oh, I remember like you helping me with this. And like now I keep it with me forever. But yeah, I think going from pre-divorce, because at first I was like, I don't know, this might be too early to have you hop on because you are going through a lot right now. I don't want you to be overworking, like we were talking about. Sometimes the grief is we just put everything on our plate to keep us busy. And so I was kind of reluctant to work with them because I didn't want this to just be like another thing on their plate. And so I think that it was nice to see that even though it was just short term and then she kind of had to go take care of her personal self and go through all of that, that she was still able to keep in mind what we went through over a month, even long after we were together.
Well done. Well done. Yeah, it's nice when you do a job and after weeks and months they keep texting you and say, "Hey, thank you." Is yeah, it's a satisfaction. You put a lot of effort in what we do, and it is nice to see that actually we can make a change in life, in people's life. What are the common challenge the clients have?
I think it's the giving themselves grace because they're making change in their lives. And we are creatures of habit. And so we want the least resistance possible. And so when you're trying to start something new, maybe you'll be great and you'll like do it immediately and it'll become this habit and that's amazing. But most of the time it's not. And so it's this steady flow of like, oh no, like I didn't do it this week. And it's like, okay, well, what about next week? Like, what about tomorrow? Like, and so getting out of the headspace of like, it needs to be perfect and you need to make all this change happen now. It's like that all or nothing mindset is the biggest struggle. And being able to be like, hey, yeah, I forgot to do this, or I fell back into my old patterns yesterday. So like up the whole week's gone. Instead being like, okay, well, tomorrow I'm just going to do a little bit better than I did yesterday. And then I'll do a little bit better next time. And just accept, like, understanding that we are creatures of habit. And so knowing that we may fall back into the habits that our body is used to being in. And so just remembering that, like, we are creating new habits and that it's okay if it doesn't always go the way that we had planned it to go.
I like that you say that we are creature of habits. I would love to add habits and lazy.
Yeah, not
Habits,
intentionally, but we're like, what's the least amount of effort so my brain can
yes.
focus on everything else? Yeah.
What is the less painful job we can do? Okay. What to take less time for me to do something? Okay, we can do that.
Yes.
This is why people are selling this fast. Learn how to do faster. You become millionaire in 3 days. Very, very, very quick because they're very successful because people are looking for a quick fix.
It's true.
Yeah. Wow, I can learn to be millionaire in 3 days. Okay, let's do that. Really?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, you're right. What make the clients motivated?
I think it depends on the person. So for some people, it might be their children. You know, I want to be better for my children or for my significant other, or, you know, I have this goal that I want to work to. And if I don't do these things, I'm not going to be able to reach those goals. And so it really depends on the person and what they're working towards. For some, it might be just to be happy or to find, you know, a better happiness for themselves. And so part of it is like situating like through that like interviewing process and like talking with them. It's, you know, what keeps them up at night, what inspires them, what keeps them happy. And so I'd say the motivator really just depends on the person. It can be generally it's like a loved one because we always want to take care of everybody else before ourselves, even though we're supposed to take care of ourselves and then others. But a lot of us want other people to be taken care of. And so generally that ends up being kind of like that motivator. And then eventually it can turn more into like, I deserve to take care of myself, or I deserve to be treated this way too, kind of sort of thing.
What are the advice, if you can give advice to someone that is starting the healing process, what this could be?
I would say give yourself time. I've said grace a bunch of times, but giving yourself time and that it's okay if you feel like you're all over the place, because, like we're figuring out this new normal. And so like one day you might be crying in a hot mess and like snot rockets and like all the things. And the next day you had a really good day and you're really happy. And that's okay. Like you can have both together. Like we were mentioning, the grief and the happiness can coincide. And so it's okay to have like this up and down spiral of emotions happening, to allow it. I know even for my own life, there were a lot of times where I'm like, ew, gross, feelings are gross. Like, I don't want to feel any of those things, but they'll keep coming back until you go and feel those feelings. And so it's just a matter of, do I want to rip off the Band-Aid now and work through this now, or I'm going to wait for it to cycle back months from now, weeks from now, years from now. So allowing yourself to sit with those feelings in the present now and allowing yourself to feel both happiness and that grief at the same time, because it's normal. It's common, for us to be experiencing. We're multidimensional, like we're multi, faceted people. And so like, it's okay to have multiple feelings at the same time.
Talk me about you. How did you heal, or you still keep healing from your grief, from the loss of your ex-husband?
It's definitely been a process. For a little while, I was just laying in bed and I didn't want to do anything, even though like I wanted to be more present and a better mom. I did a lot of numbing, and so like there were times where like I did drink a lot, and like it was to the point where I would drink, and then not do anything the next day because I was so tired from, because alcohol. Oh, there's so many studies that talk about like how bad it is for your sleep. Even though it helps you fall asleep, it's not good for quality sleep. And so I know there was that aspect and a lack of community. I didn't really feel like I had the support that I needed, and like I wanted to build community. And so a lot of it was just like isolation, which isn't good. And so I think one of the first steps was the martial arts, was like I found a community to join. And even though I didn't have to talk about the grief, it was that support. Also, plus and minus is 2020 happened 2 years after. And so I was kind of forced to slow down as well. And, because I was kind of a workaholic, and I just like was like work, go to bed, take my kid to school, and so 2020 kind of made me like slow down, and then also spiraled a bit because I wrote a book about my late marriage and just like the substance use issues and all the different things that happened in our relationship. But I never really sat and like went through that before. And so that was really hard. And I know I've talked about on my podcast, just like depersonalization, derealization, because I was just kind of stuck in this, like, I know that this already happened and this isn't my life anymore, but I was just stuck in like not being able to be in the present. So after I was stuck in that for a while, because it was really hard, because I didn't have, like, I worked for myself. So if I wasn't showing up, like I couldn't make money. And so like I had to get like a regular job for a little bit, which kind of helped, but not really. But a lot of it was just like me getting more outdoors and like making myself pay attention to the different senses. Like, what do I smell? What do I hear? What do I see? What colors are there? And just kind of being in the now versus just wherever my head wanted me to be. I think that was a really big one for me. And then just like the more and more I focused on the present versus being stuck in the past or future. Because I think that's where I ended up getting stuck into, or like existential, like anxiety of like, well, like what's even real? Like it was just, there was a whole lot of different spirals. So at first it was just sadness and whatever. And then it was another form of what even is life, and like all of this anxiety. So I guess it went from like depression to like an anxiety, and then finding this happy medium of like just being in the now, and like, yes, keep in mind a little bit of the past. Yes, keep in mind a little bit of the future, but like neither one of those are going to help you right now if you're not in the now. And so I've really had to work on just being, I guess. And that's kind of what's helped me. and like allowing that, there are times where like I might be a little bit more sad or I might be a little bit more tired, and like acknowledging that, because there are going to be times where I'll also have energy and be happier, and like letting both of those exist. And so being more in tune with like how I'm feeling and where I'm feeling and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is why you created your podcast. Your podcast is called again?
From grief to gold.
Yes.
Yes.
No, I know what is the name of the podcast, but I wanted you to say the name of the
Yeah.
podcast. No, we are almost at the end of this. All of the people out there that listen to this podcast, go and check the podcast From Grief to Gold, because I think it's very, very interesting. Melissa and have very nice interviews with a lot of interesting people, talks about griefs, and many of you out there can actually find yourself in those conversations. I think the work that you do, Melissa, is very, very good. We need more people talk about grief and actually understand what's going on in the grief section. Life can be very hard and sometimes is cruel. We can find ourselves in places where we don't know where to go, what to do. So well done, Melissa. Can I ask you, where do you work? What is your area of work? Where states and
Yes. So I'm a little bit of a wanderlust. So I've lived a little bit of everywhere, but I'm in the US. Right now I'm in Washington State, and I freelance. So I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. So I do like full service marketing, in the process of also working on my degree and moving towards the accountability and all of that aspect. But yeah, so basically I have at Much Love by Mel on most social media platforms, and that's kind of my like collaboration of all things I love, because I'm just multi-passionate and I like to do things that I like. And so it's like combination of like, here's my outdoorsy trip, here's photography I took. Once I have my podcast, I have the new season coming up with a lot of great interviews. So From Grief to Gold's also linked to that account. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit of everywhere, and I wouldn't trade it. I think again, with like, we're human and we have lots of interest. And I think it's important that we allow ourselves to dive into those different areas of interest, because life is short. And
yes, we must have fun.
Yeah.
One important thing is Washington State is not Washington, D.C., correct?
Correct. They're on the polar opposite side. So Washington, D.C. is Virginia area. And then, Washington State's up by Canada.
Yes. So the capital of Washington, D.C. is?
I don't know if it's Seattle. I don't know, actually. I just moved. I'm only here for a year, but...
It's not Portland?
Portland is Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So I think Seattle. I think it's Seattle, Washington. Yeah. It should be Seattle, Washington, but I could be wrong, because sometimes...
Oh my God, we need to go to study with...
I gotta go take some geography classes.
Well, thank you so much, Melissa, and well, see you next time.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you to be here. And to all of you guys that listen, take care of yourself. And if you are in a moment of grief, reach out with people that can help you: counselor, coaches, psychologists, friends, family, dogs, pets. Don't put everything under the carpet, because you need to take care of that. Thank you so much.
Thank
Ciao.
you.